Download this app for free at newsvoice.com/Jimmy or click the link under this video. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Jimmy Dore Show. I'm here with Steph Zamorano, the miserable liberal, and Ron Placone. Ron Placone is doing a CD release party this Thursday at the Sycamore in Hollywood, California. Go to ronplacone.com for tickets. All right. Remember when Trump would say this? There will be big news coming soon for our great American auto workers. After many decades of losing your jobs to other countries, you have waited long enough. Well, that big news, here it is. Breaking: GM Lordstown to close March 1st. More details to follow. Corporate greed at its worst after reaping $514 million from GOP tax scam and billions in public subsidies. GM is set to fire nearly 15,000 workers. Tired of winning? Are you tired of winning? I guess so, because now everyone's losing. General Motors' decision to gut its workforce epitomizes the bad corporate behavior Republicans in Congress have incentivized for generations. I would say Democrats also. I would not put this on Republicans. I would put this on both parties. I would put this on our political class, which is bought and paid for. So tax justice and labor advocates were among those who expressed outrage Monday at the news that General Motors, one of the corporate giants that benefited immensely from the Republican tax plan last year, would cut 15% of its workforce, shuttering production facilities in 3 states as well as Canada. Well, let's see. The automaker is closing 5 plants in Ohio. Wow. 5 plants in Ohio, Michigan, Maryland, and Ontario, with plans to cut thousands of office jobs in January, slashing a total of 14,700 jobs.
Well, if only the government would have given them a bailout, this wouldn't have happened.
That's exactly what happened, Ron. That's a good point. The American taxpayers bailed out GM to the tune of around $50 billion.
Oh, that's right. They got bailed out and the people didn't.
That's right.
Sometimes okay. They got a bailout to not do this.
And so what we did with GM was we did socialism. So they failed at capitalism. GM failed. They went bankrupt. So the government said, that's okay, bad business people. You went bankrupt. You had a bad idea. We're going to give you $50 billion to keep going. And as soon as you become profitable again, you're going to skip town and F over everybody in our country. That's how it works. The move comes less than a year after the Republican Party pushed through its tax plan, which offered $514 million tax break for the company. A year after they got $500 million in tax breaks, they're saying, F you, and we're leaving. According to the advocacy group Not One Penny, $100 million of those savings went to enriching GM shareholders. Contrary to the GOP's claim that the corporate benefit of the tax cuts would trickle down to its workers in the form of raises and bonuses. May I have a trickle of your $100 million? May I have a trickle, sir? Sir, please, just a trickle. President Trump's steel tariffs have contributed to rising costs facing GM as domestic steel has grown more expensive. But critics suggest that the company's huge profits and financial assistance from the government over the past several years should have left GM capable of keeping its workforce intact.
It should have been required that they keep their workforce intact. That's the requirement when we give you welfare at millions and millions of dollars.
Billions of dollars, not millions. We gave them billions in dollars in welfare to GM. We must step away from the anti-labor thinking of seeking simply the lowest labor cost on the planet, said the UAW President Gary Jones. The practice of circumventing American labor in favor of moving production to nations that tolerate wages less than half of what our American brothers and sisters make must stop. It's not going to. Both parties are bought, and you have to pledge your vote to the Democrats before the election. So they'll never do anything for you, or you're a bad person. I'm a petulant bad person because I won't pledge my vote to any blue. So now a bunch of non-thinking celebrities will call me a purist because I won't vote for this stuff. More importantly, we must understand that these companies, including GM, are no longer in trouble. They are recording annual profits in the tens of billions. But they're packing up, closing 5 plants. Are they going to stop making cars, GM? Are they going out of business as they're making billions in profits? Of course not. They're going to seek cheaper labor in Mexico. So isn't it funny how the company can go across the border whenever it feels like it, but workers can't? You're effed.
Yeah, it's not called an illegal company.
No, they're not. That's right. Well, Warren Gunnels says GM got $514 million from the Trump tax scam, made $6 billion in profits. Wouldn't part of that money you gave them, a part of the $50 million you gave GM, wouldn't part of that be, well, once you start making profits, you have to give some of those profits back to the community? I would. You have to give some of your profit. That's part of the deal. We give you $50 billion, you give 10% of your profits to the community. When you start making profits. You know what would happen then? They would never make a profit, if you know what I mean. They poured $100 million into stock buybacks. They paid its CEO $22 million. Received over $600 million in government contracts. So they got $500 million. They got $500 million in tax breaks. They got another over $500 million in contracts. That's $1 billion right there from the government. Gift. That's a gift. There's $1 billion. Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown said GM owes the community answers on how the rest of the supply chain will be impacted and what consequences its disastrous decision will have on the Valley of Ohio. Newsflash, Sherrod, they don't owe you shit, and you ain't getting anything. Maybe you should have thought about that when you gave them all that money. Because they ain't doing. What do you don't know? You don't know how capitalism works? You really don't know? You don't know how capitalists, the oligarchs, are completely amoral and couldn't give a crap about who gets hurt and as long as they can make an extra penny? You don't know that? I think you do. My office stands ready to do everything we can to help these workers. The decision is the corporate greed at its worst. Even worse, the company reaped a massive tax break from last year's GOP tax bill and failed to invest that money in American jobs, choosing to build its Chevy Blazer in Mexico. For those wondering, in the past decade, the Canadian government gave General Motors about $14 billion, and the U.S. government gave them about $50. And they said, hey, thanks for the money. Thanks. This is the guy who ran for governor in Michigan. He lost to the woman who then put the CEO of Blue Cross on her transition team. So the Democrat who beat him in the primary is an unbelievable corporatist. You wonder why half the country doesn't vote. He said GM closing plant in Detroit Hamtramck is devastating. It's why we cannot continue to rely on big corporations for job creation and why they shouldn't be getting our tax dollars. Time to invest in our schools and the means of small businesses like public transit. Time to invest in our schools and the means of small business like public transit. Yeah, it's time. Been time for a long time. So there you go. Are you Trumpers tired of winning? And I'm not saying this is Trump's fault that GM is leaving. What I'm saying is this is how capitalism works. And what a crazy way to run a railroad. That's a saying. What a crazy way for us to run our economy. That at any moment, a psychopathic, amoral, oligarch capitalist can pull the rug underneath entire communities so they can go make an extra nickel somewhere else. Now, they say they're doing this because they have to, the electric cars are the thing, and they're going to phase out of the cars they're making and try to phase into electric. That's what they're saying.
That's what they're saying. And for some reason, I guess they don't need to make these cars
I guess
where they're
need...
making them now,
yeah,
apparently.
I guess because they're transitioning, those cars will just appear magically somewhere, and they won't have to pay anyone to make them.
R&D's working really hard on that one. Just somehow air is just poof, hey, here it is.
So this is a crazy... So we had Dr. Richard Wolff, who's... he has that show, Democracy in the Workplace, and he talks about democracy in the workplace and what does that mean. So when we gave that $50 billion to GM, what we could have done was, here's $50 billion to GM, and now you're a worker co-op, meaning the same capitalists who just ran this company into bankruptcy are now going to have to share ownership of the company with the workers and the decision process with the workers. Meaning the people who live in that community get to decide on the economic future of that community. So do you think if GM went to the management at GM went to the workers and said, do you guys, we're going to take a vote. Should we move the company, this production facility to Mexico to make another nickel? Or should we stay here? What do you think they would do?
Everybody would laugh and then say, we're going to lunch. See you in an hour.
Thanks. See you in an hour.
We're going to go on our paid lunch break. See you later.
I just can't understand how you can get all of this money from two governments.
Right.
And then you can just destroy the lives.
Whatever you want to do with it.
Of almost 15,000 individuals that will have long-term consequences. That how do they have access to health care? How do they have access to paying their mortgages? How to pay their rent? How to pay for their own cars? Like this is a catastrophe for these people. And all I keep thinking, it's like $22 million the CEO got.
Right.
How do you
know
I
how
don't
much
even
money
know what kind of country you're living in that's happening.
Do you know how much money that is? I'll tell you how much money that is. That's $100,000 a day. That's how much money that is. $22 million, right? Yeah, that's exactly what that is. So what that is, $22 million a year is $500,000 a week. There's 50, how many weeks in a year?
52.
52.
And I just want to point out, so like when you're watching the evening news, you're watching your regular, network, evening news, and they show you the criminal that just shoplifted at a store.
Right.
And they'll show you the photo of that criminal. And it's because it's petty. And it's like, what? Maybe the max they're stealing is $100 worth of shit.
Right.
This is a real thief, the CEO of GM.
I know.
That's the real thief. And that's the person that is corrupting our society. And I just think it's awful. I think it's a disgrace. And I think these business practices are allowed by our government that's owned and bought by corporations.
So what the United States government could have done when they gave that $50 billion to GM was say, now you're a worker co-op. And that'll bring stability to this company and to these communities. They could have said that. And by the way, you're no longer making those cars no one wants to buy. You're going to start making stuff that people can use. Mass transit. How about that? They could have done anything they wanted. There's many ways to bail out GM. So now GM is bankrupt. So now the government has to decide what kind of economy we're going to have. Sounds like China, right? But that's what we did in the United States. And what did we do? We threw good money after bad. We gave it right to the same motherfuckers who've been screwing us left and right. By the way, the same guys who went bankrupt. We just gave it to them, no strings attached. They could have done it a million ways. They could have said, you're a worker co-op. Now you have to make stuff that people actually need. Now we're going to use this $50 billion to invest in our... No. They didn't do any of it. They just gave it to the same capitalistic oligarchs that went bankrupt. And now they're not bankrupt. Now they're making billions in profit. And how do they reward you for that? They screw you over. This is a crazy way to run economies. There's different ways. But right now everybody has to beg and suck the dick of Jeff Bezos so you could please build this facility in our city, please. It's a crazy way to run economies. And if you want to know about worker co-ops, watch the video we did with Richard Wolff, Dr. Richard Wolff, Professor Richard Wolff. He explains what it is. He talks about how there's the biggest co-op in the world. It has 100,000 workers in it in Spain and has been around forever and is very successful. They never tell you about that on the news, do they? So, again, we can decide. You know, capitalism, Marx was right about it. It's eating itself right now. Cities are hollowed out from coast to coast. This kind of stuff goes on a daily basis. An oligarch capitalist decides to pull the rug out from underneath an entire community, and they're fucked. And that's it. And guess what? And then what happens? They build bigger prisons. Did you see Roger and Me? Michael Moore's movie? Then they build bigger prisons. Soon as GM left Flint, they built a bigger prison. They did the same thing in Rockford, Illinois. They're doing it everywhere. Again, and some people will tell you that if we get behind Nancy Pelosi, that we'll all get fixed. Incremental baby steps. The time for incrementalism is over. Trump's got no ideas on what to do about this. Trump's got no ideas. You want to hear what his idea is? Here, let's watch this. Let's watch Mr. Businessman. Here's what he's going to do about it. Ready?
Well, we don't like it. I believe they'll be opening up something else. And I was very tough. I spoke with her when I heard they were closing. And I said, you know, this country's done a lot for General Motors. You better get back in there soon. That's Ohio. And you better get back in there soon. So we have a lot of pressure on them. You have senators. You have a lot of other people. A lot of pressure. They say
the senators don't pressure the capitalists. The capitalists tell the senators what to do. This is the exactly opposite of how it works. And of course he knows that because he's one of the capitalists who used to tell him what to do.
Cruise is not selling well. I say, well, then get a car that is selling well and put it back in. So I think you're going to see something else happen there, but I'm not happy about it. Their car is not selling well, so they'll put something else. I have no doubt that in a not too distant future, they'll put something else. They better put something else in.
Or what?
He's got nothing. I'm going to throw a bit of a tantrum and tell them they better, or nothing, absolutely nothing.
I'm not happy, and I have a Twitter account, man. That's it.
They're now a profitable company making billions of dollars. The time for leverage over GM is when they needed our $50 billion to stay afloat. And we should have turned them into, we should have national. Well, at that point, we've nationalized GM, meaning they're not a company unless the government gives them money to run. They could have did anything they wanted. We did nothing. And he's got absolutely no plans, by the way. And he was right before he was president, when he would tell you that the unemployment rates are rigged and bullshit. They are. They are. People in this country, 80% of wage earners live paycheck to paycheck in the richest country in the world that is spending $700 billion to bomb the rest of the world to create refugees. You know how much it takes to end homelessness? $20 billion. We can end poverty in America, we could end for $200 billion. That's how much more we're spending on the military since the height of the Iraq War. At the height of the Iraq War, get this figure. We were spending $500 billion on our military at the height of the Iraq War. We're now spending $700 billion. We had a 40% increase in our military spending since the height of the Iraq War. What the F? So if we were to take that $200 billion, we could have ended homelessness. Could have ended poverty in America. Boom. But we don't. Why? Because we're run by psychopathic oligarchs. And there's a lot of people right now trying to change that by working inside the system. And I wish them well. It is the opinion of this show that is a fool's errand. That the capitalists are never going to, the military are never going to let you take over one of the major parties. It's not going to happen. They kill people on the regular. That's what the military-industrial complex does for money. They kill people by the hundreds of thousands on the regular for money. The bankers steal people's houses on the regular for money and profit. They kick old ladies, they kick veterans out of their houses for money and profit. Illegally, they do it. That's who's running our country. That's who's running our economy. This is so good luck. Are you tired of winning? They better get back in there. He's got nothing. It's a crazy way to run an economy by letting capitalists, oligarch capitalists, decide if you get to have a frickin' community or not. And at the whim, the drop of a hat, they can pull the rug right out from underneath communities, which they've been doing since Ronald Reagan.
And you know, Jimmy, neither party is talking about a jobs program.
No!
And when was the last time you ever heard that our government gave people money?
Right?
When did they give the people of America
$50 billion.
When? You tell me when.
Hey, guess
Where
what?
would that fucking money go, Jimmy?
Right
back in
right
the
back
economy.
into the economy. If they gave people $50 billion after the economic crash and bailed them out so they could pay their mortgage, you know where that money would go? Right back in the economy.
And neighborhoods wouldn't be destroyed. And families would still be together.
And we wouldn't have hollowed out communities. You're right. We need a real revolution in this country. Nancy Pelosi is the problem, and now all the progressives are getting behind the problem because you got to play inside the two-party system, which is a mistake. Well, we need a revolution. Could you imagine if they said that shit during George? You gotta try to work to change Parliament. Yeah, I know the king is taxing us without representation, but you got to work as No, he said fuck it. They got guns and they overthrew the government. That's what George Washington did. They got guns and overthrew the fucking government. Because there was no incremental fucking workarounds. That was taxation without representation. We live in an oligarchy right now. Your government has already been stolen from you. There's no democracy in the United States. Your vote does not matter. It's time for a revolution. Our next live Jimmy Dore show is February 1st in Burbank, California. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a list of all our live shows, and please become a premium member if you can. Become a patron. It's the way we support this show because they're coming at us, and we give you bonus. We give you hours of bonus material every week. Check it out. Become a patron. And if you can, make sure you're still subscribed. They unsubscribe people every day. I know it sounds crazy. It only takes a second. Please make sure and click that bell when you subscribe so they'll send you a note.